In this lecture, we will explore more options that we can use with the matrix keyword in GitHub Actions. So here we define only one job, but using the matrix keyword, 4 jobs will be created, 2 will be running on a Ubuntu latest system and 2 on a Windows system to test these 2 Docker images, the Hello World Docker image and the Nginx Docker image. Okay, and we saw previously that when we execute this workflow, it was failed because it was enabled to create an Nginx container on a Windows system. Okay, first of all, here I will change the Nginx image. Instead of Nginx, we will work with the Alpine image because we have a process running inside the Nginx container, so it will continue running until killing the system or the machine running the job. That's why here we choose to work with the Alpine Docker image instead of Nginx. So previously we saw that when a job in the matrix fail, the remaining job will be cancelled. For example, here because of the deployed job running on Windows using the Nginx Docker image was failed, the deployed job that will run on the Ubuntu latest system using the Nginx image was cancelled. And here we can change this behavior using the failfast keyword. So by default it is set to true. We can set it to false to prevent the workflow or the remaining jobs to be cancelled when a job fails. So by setting the failfast option to false, now even if the job running on Windows using the Alpine image will fail, the remaining job will continue to run. So let's commit the changes and see the execution of the workflow. So let's refresh here the Actions tab. So now the workflow was triggered. We still have 4 jobs. So here we see that even if the deployed job running on Windows was failed, the workflow continued to run the deployed job running the Hello World image that will be executed on Windows. So the failure of the deployed job on Windows using the Alpine image doesn't prevent the remaining job to continue executing. And that's done by setting the failfast option to false. And we saw that when the workflow was triggered, all the jobs will start running in parallel. For example, here we have 4 jobs, so all the jobs will start running at the same time in parallel. We can change that by using the max parallel option. So here we can set it to the maximum number of jobs that should be running in parallel. For example, if we set it to 2, when the workflow is triggered, we will have a maximum number of jobs running in parallel equal to 2. So let's commit the changes and see how the workflow will be executed. So let's refresh here the Actions tab. Now the workflow was triggered. So here we still have the 4 jobs. So you see here that the first 2 jobs are executed in parallel and they are completed successfully. Now it moves to the second 2 jobs, the 2 jobs that will be running on the Windows system. So here you see that we have a maximum number of jobs running at the same time equal to 2. So the job running on Windows using the Alpine image was failed, and the last job was completed successfully. The last thing that we will talk about here is the deploy job running on Windows using the Alpine image. So we know that this job will always fail because Windows cannot run a container using the Alpine image. So we can exclude this job, and that can be done using the exclude option. Okay, so here in the matrix we can exclude some values from these variables. For example, here we don't want to run a job using the Windows system and the Alpine image. So here we set the OS that we want to exclude, which is Windows latest. And for the image, so the combination that we want to exclude is creating a job using the Windows system and the Alpine Docker image. So we know that using the OS and the images variables, we will have 4 jobs. We exclude the job that will be used the OS Windows latest and the image Alpine. We can also use the include option to include another combination. For example, we want to execute this job on another OS. For example, let's say that we want to execute this job on the Ubuntu latest system, but using an image called node Alpine. So the variables that we have to set either in the include or exclude option are the same variables defined here in the matrix keyword. So here we have this matrix with these 2 variables. Using the matrix, we will create 4 jobs because we have 2 operating systems and 2 Docker images. But here we have used the exclude option to exclude one job, which is the job that will be executed on Windows and using the Docker image Alpine. And we have included another job. We want to create another job that will be executed on Ubuntu and use this Docker image. Why we didn't add the Docker image, the node Alpine image here to the images variable? That's because we want to test this image only on Ubuntu latest. If we add it here to the images variable, it will be executed both on Ubuntu and on Windows. Let's now commit the changes and see the execution of the workflow. So let's refresh here the Actions tab. Now the workflow was triggered. And now we see that here we have 4 jobs. 3 jobs are running on Ubuntu and only 1 job will be running on Windows system. So we have excluded the job that will be running on Windows and use the Docker image Alpine. And we have added this combination, this job that will be executed on Ubuntu system and use the node Alpine Docker image. And now the workflow was completed successfully. So that's all for now. Thank you very much and see you next time.